It's that time of week where we add 3 more roguelikes to the tier wall, and this week's picks are Orbital Bullet, Peglin, and Megaloot. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm JammyGiraffe, the English idiot and roguelike addict. We've got 3 more games to add to the tier wall, which is basically an evolving tier list, which changes with DLCs, updates, patches, and comments from you guys and arguments from you. Out of the 3 games today, 2 of them are kind of lesser known, I think, with one of them being a quite recent release that's got a bit of potential to it. No movements to the actual current wall. I think it's in a good spot right now. I think most of the games on there are in the right places. Tell me if I'm wrong. But let's jump straight on into the first game. Let's get started with Orbital Bullet. So Orbital Bullet is a fast-paced 360-degree platformer where all the levels are in a kind of cylindrical format. It's developed by Smokestab and published by a whole host of publishers, to be honest. Assemble Entertainment, Whisper Games, and Mayflower Entertainment. Now, first things to say about this game before I go into kind of the game itself is the developers actually give 10% of the revenue from a particular version called Save the World edition to charities that deal with cleaning oceans, which is bloody brilliant. So check it out on Steam. You know, it's not a sponsor. I'm not saying that for that reason. I just think that's a worthwhile cause. The game itself, though, is a shooter action platformer where, due to the kind of cylindrical nature and shape of the levels, bullets can travel all the way around the circle and hit yourself. Think of the film The Wanted with Angelina Jolie, James McAvoy. Not that I wish to inflict that upon anyone, but you traverse planets which are procedurally generated and have multiple levels that go through vertical platforms, if you like. So you can rotate around. Once you've cleared that particular level of any enemies, you can then move up or down depending on what the world has given you. You can also move across into other kind of cylinders or towers as well. There's a huge amount of weapons in the game, so the weapons are what it's all about. It's called Orbital Bullet after all, and they vary in the kind of bullet types. So you got like lightning, grenades, rockets, fire, or standard bullets, which, like the sniper in the game, which literally travels in a full circle very, very quickly, so it can hit you if it doesn't hit any of the various blocks and terrain that you can smash and open and jump over, etc. There's 4 different classes. From the engineer, which kind of creates turrets and drones, or you got like the fire hellion, which, you know, rains fire down on things, and, you know, flamethrower toasts everything in sight. There's multiple ways to kind of move around as well, so you can use zip lines, you can jump off the enemy's heads, you got jetpacks. There's multiple ways. You got a dodge roll that does have infinity frames, as well as, you know, double jump as well, which you can augment to make even better. There is a good amount of customization with it as well. You kind of have these skill trees which you're granted a row of 4 different skills that you can choose from. So you can have that row of 4 or that row of 4, and they build up into a tower so that you can progress through a skill tree that you kind of make yourself, which I thought was quite a nice touch. And during every run, you know, you're generating resources which you can take back to unlock additional characters, more of the skill tree, and progress to unlock a door towards the last kind of planet, last boss. The pixel art, I think, is really quite polished, but the better thing about it, I would say, is how well it runs. It runs really, really well. It's very responsive, but the big thing is the music. Music in this is brilliant. They even released an OST, which I think comes as part of the Save the World edition, the one that's gives money to charity. So all in all, game is relatively easy, I would say, compared to other roguelikes, but In the latter stages, enemies can sometimes and very randomly become quite relentless, and if you haven't got the right builds, you're going to struggle to get through some of those parts. But 9 times out of 10, with the way you can augment your weapons and skill tree, you should be able to make it through most of the time. I think, in summary, looking at the wall now, it's a really decent roguelike with a few kind of unique elements that kind of keep you coming back. It isn't setting the world on fire by any means, but would I recommend it? Yes, to people who love roguelikes. Would I recommend it to people just as a game in general? Probably not. But if you're a lover of roguelikes, you like a lot of similar games to this, it's worth the money for sure. I think I'd wait till it was maybe on offer, but in general, I think it's worth it. So I look down to kind of the bottom end, the bottom half of this. Do I think it's better than, say, Patch Quest or Monster Train up there? I don't think so. I think this sits in uncommon. Maybe a little better than Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, so I'm going to put it sort of in the middle of uncommon for now. But it's worth checking out. But let's move out on to Peglin. So, as you may be able to deduce from the name, this is a roguelike adaptation of Peggle, mixing up Peggle and goblins, I guess. So you're a Peglin, which looks awfully like Grogu, I have to say. So the game is developed and published by Red Nexus Games with support from IndieArc, and it did come out of early access just at the end of August, which is one of the reasons I wanted to add this to the wall. It was in early access for about 2 years, I think. Fact check me on that. And I played it during the early access, and I really like it. I think it's got a lot of charm. Obviously, it's a roguelike take on pachinko machines, which you're fighting enemies by collecting different orbs to add to your bag, so you end up with a bag of balls, which is your version of building a deck, I suppose. And those orbs all have different abilities and different effects. Throw them into the pachinko machine, they pop the pegs and earn damage. So every peg that you hit earns a certain amount of damage, and there are different pegs. Much like in Peggle, you get one that ups your score because it creates critical hits, as an example. You get a peg that you can hit that will reset the board. And from level to level, you get completely different setups of board. And at the end of the level, you then throw a ball down to choose what path you're going down. You also gather relics during your playthrough, which can augment your playstyle. Think Slay the Spire with the items you get in that. And the enemies just move along the top and get closer and closer to you until they get right up next to you and they can attack you. You have a pretty high health pool in this to be able to get through the early game, but late on it does become much tougher. The enemies have very high health pools and do a lot more damage. There are 3 different areas, like biomes, levels, whatever you want to call it, each one with several boards that you have to get through. And obviously the main gameplay loop consists of throwing orbs into the pachinko machine, they collide with pegs, you get higher and higher numbers, and that does damage to the monsters. It's pretty straightforward. And like I said, as you progress, you get the different orbs, which do wildly change your runs to give you that kind of roguelike element. Some are super bouncy, some heal you, some increase your max health. And in each level as well, there are kind of secrets and random events and shops and a final boss for each. It does feel like a slightly different version of a dungeon crawler, if you like. Each successful run takes about maybe an hour to complete, once you're familiar with the game at least. And honestly, it's the perfect game to play while you're maybe multitasking, you're doing something else, maybe you're watching a YouTube video and you play this at the same time. I think it's the perfect game for that kind of chilling game experience. Great game to try an achievement hunt with as well, if you're into that. But like I said, it is straightforward. It is what it says on the tin, but it's well executed. You know, no more, no less than that. But brilliant game all round to sit and chill with. Easy placement here for me in terms of this is again into that uncommon spot. I would highly recommend this though when it was on offer. Now, I've already put one into the uncommon today, so let's just compare the two. Is Orbital Bullet or Peglin better? It's a very difficult choice. They don't necessarily doesn't necessarily have to be better than the other. They both have unique twists. There aren't many other pachinko machine roguelikes, but there are a lot of other platformer roguelikes, and the fact that Orbital Bullet is in a cylinder isn't that much of a difference. So I would actually put Peglin slightly above it, but not much. So I'm going to slap it here for now. And then finally, we shall move on to Megaloot. So this game came out very recently. Megaloot is a highly addictive kind of inventory management game, combining strategically to craft and dominate different builds. It's developed by Exhilarate and published by Raven Age Games and Instinct 3. You enter how did they put it? You enter a mysterious tower that replicates all sorts of objects from other realities. And you find yourself in battles that require valuable loot, armor, rings, weapons, helmets, chests, boots, all of the usual stuff you'd expect in an RPG game, right? And using those armor and loot pieces, you make builds to progress through the game and clear the floors. Defeating enemies, you earn gold that can be spent on new loot. Now, the kind of mechanics of this game are a bit different. So you'll have your enemies that you need to attack. You have your core stats, but it is kind of turn-based, if you like. You just choose whether to attack, or you buy additional items in the shop, add them into your inventory, or even use the items as consumables that give you temporary buffs. That was a good one. Continuously kind of managing the loot becomes not harder, but more complicated, I think is a better way of putting it. You have to think about more things as you progress, because you can really kind of break the game in this. You can end up with so much damage that you're doing millions, and it goes on for a long way. The way the loot works as well, each piece of loot is part of a set, or it has a trait, if you like, and you can have 3 set bonuses at any one time. So if you've got one helmet that's got one trait, a piece of armor with another trait, and I don't know, a sword with another trait, you have your 3, which then means that any piece of loot that you equip has to have one of those 3. It can't have any others. You have a max of 3 that you're allowed. But every additional piece that you equip from one of those traits buffs that trait. So you're constantly playing around with those traits to find better gear and upgrade the gear you have. There's kind of a common thing in most games, let's be honest, where if you get 2 or 3 of the same, you can upgrade that piece of loot. There's I think 10 different characters to start with, which is a bit bizarre for a roguelike for me, is the fact that all 10 are available from the get-go. Obviously it adds a lot of replayability, but to me that's kind of not the replayability, but the extra characters is kind of a negative. The game is in desperate need of kind of meta progression, if you like, where it doesn't really have much in the way of unlocks. You know, you'll have a great time for, I don't know, maybe 8-10 hours, but you realise quite quickly that when you do complete runs, you don't really get anything for it. It needs some tweaks and updates, but it is worth saying, this game is only £8, £8, I don't know, what, $12 to you guys, something like that in the US. So it doesn't cost much by any means, but you're not getting that much game for it. I think it's got hefty potential, but it needs some, some unlocks. And it's very difficult for them now because they've already released a game with 10 characters. You can't go, oh, you only have 3 characters now and you have to unlock the others. So I think it's going to be kind of difficult for them to backtrack, but I think it needs to happen. It's another roguelike that really is hurt by heavy RNG as well. And there's no real kind of tutorial or explanation. I think people probably start playing this game and realize, oh, I'm just seeing numbers go up. I don't really understand what I'm doing. You have to kind of feel your way through to get an understanding. And there's random difficulty spikes every now and again where you just find that you're going through, you feel like you're doing amazingly, and then boom, something comes along and it not one hits you, but may as well do, and you don't really understand what you did wrong. So there's definitely a learning curve with the game. I wanted to love this game more than I do, but the fact that you get nothing at the end of run kind of kills the roguelike experience for me. So I'm afraid for now, this is actually going to sit in the common area. And I think people who have already played this game are probably going to disagree, but we'll see. Please feel free to give me your feedback. But it's going down in this common slot for now. So those are the 3 for today. If you made it this far, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I bring one of these out each week. Also, I stream on Twitch on Tuesdays and Fridays, roguelikes and community games. Please stop by. But more importantly, please drop a comment. Let me know what roguelikes you also want me to add to this wall. I have a long list at the moment. Don't worry, there are some big ones that I know I haven't put on here yet. Splunky, Risk of Rain, FTL, Into the Breach, naming a few. They will get added on, don't you worry. But please recommend some games, give me your arguments for any movements that you see fit, and spread the word. I will wrap it up there. Apologies for today, I've been a little off, I'm absolutely knackered, but it's much appreciated. Sending positive vibes. Jammy out.